OK， 大概就是先这样子啊。那我们先欢迎汤姆斯老师，谢谢。
I just realized you gave me introduction in Mandarin. Does that mean that I have to speak Mandarin?
No, okay, just speak English.
Well, let's see. Thank you very much for presenting this afternoon. My usual lectures, I just gave 2 lectures earlier this week, one at 研习大学 and the other one at 交通大学. I know something about 交通大学 was that everybody, when they're lectured, they always have a dinner before the lecture started. I hope you guys have your lunch already, before this event starts. I myself, I think this slide with introductions that I'm here also on several occasions on projects where right now we're doing a little research project that was actually focused on an exhibition later next year. And then also in addition also have working on a monograph with Garden City and also an exhibition with them. So on this occasion, yesterday it was my only day I didn't have a lecture. Was actually got three projects started. So I probably won't be able to show you those upcoming projects, but I will show you some projects that I've been working on. I'm not going to show all of the projects. As myself, I teach full-time at Hong Kong U. Previously, before that, I actually taught at Cooper Union in New York. So I'm relatively new in Hong Kong. I'm not from Hong Kong. My last name, imagine that everybody speaks in Cantonese. I don't speak any Cantonese. My Mandarin is much better. Anyhow, I hope today is actually the lecture is called Unlearning. For you, some of you in your first year, you might be thinking, what does that really mean? My whole education, my studies, has been in these couple places. I started at SCI-Arc. It was a school in a warehouse because my father thought I should start my study in architecture in a warehouse building rather than at university. So I went there, but then I realized that after a while I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in California too much. And also I feel like Taichung is kind of like Los Angeles. It's really beautiful weather, and but you have to drive everywhere. So I thought maybe some place I could go, maybe it's New York. So then I spent 4 years at Cooper Union. Then I realized that, you know what, I was interested in theater. And so I decided to spend 1 year at Juilliard School. So from a school which is about visual arts, then I went to a school which is about performing arts. And because I thought at some point, wouldn't it be great, just like where you guys are sitting right now, I can see architecture where actually things move around as opposed to walking around to see buildings. So I thought, is there a possible way to develop this idea of kind of a narrative, reading buildings, reading space, through learning through performance arts? And then I never went to graduate school. I'm probably the only architect in the University of Hong Kong that doesn't have a master's degree. So it also gives you hope that you could also teach without having a master's degree, which I always very professing about the idea. You don't need two same double degrees again. So I always started talking and encourage my students, stick to the gun. If you have something intuitive, follow it, right? My own graduate degree is actually I spent at American Academy in Rome. This is where I actually won the Rome Prize. And that was important because basically there's only 2 architects in the whole entire field. It's like a Noah's Ark. Basically, everybody's 2 people in each field. So I get to learn a lot about aspect of cities and understanding through not architects, but through archaeologists, medieval scholars, Renaissance scholars, composer, conservationists, and such. Another aspect of my education is really places I've been around. Right? So another place, I was born in a very remote area called Malaysia. And it's actually an island of Borneo, which is not Renaissance or anything, right? So it's a very good tourist destination right now, but the aspect is the fact that learning a place is actually learning where you are from, rooted. Los Angeles is very important. A lot of people hate Los Angeles. I love to hate Los Angeles very much as a kid. That was a very important aspect of learning a place. New York was very important because, not because I skipped a lot of classes, but I realized the city was actually a place to learn. And I decided, I thought I was gonna go through every play and go see every possible exhibition because the city was the learning platform. And I spent several years in Hangzhou because after I graduated from school, I worked as a carpenter, and next thing I worked as an editor for one of the biggest companies in New York called KPF. So I edited a book, and when I edited the book, and I realized that all these projects are all in Asia. I should go visit in China. So after 3 weeks of China, I decided to move there. Basically after 1 year of school, I decided to move to China and started practice. And so that was a very important aspect of all these places. And I hope that when you guys also see places and cities, not only because of a tourist destination, but it's also a particular time where you should be and where to be at. And so I always said that Rome was that one aspect, was a very important part because this is something really that I was sort of interested in about the aspect of ruins. Places that are kind of forgotten. I know that Taiwan has a lot of ruins, so I think this is a very interesting aspect to imagine the places rather than being nostalgic of one place. I run a practice, and typically I run a practice also aligned with the research. I don't usually do university type of research. I usually more like street credit research. I go out and I probe for problems and I try to develop how to develop these exhibitions or such. Right now at the moment, I know you guys always do the idea of context. I'm very interested in the idea of autonomous structure. Places that has no relation to context, but a space in itself, and also just experience of kind of relationship of your perception and reading building. Right now I'm also working on a project called on Alto Rossi, the unbuilt structure of Alto Rossi. Basically, I'm building all his drawings from his little sketches, like a city, but I'm building tiny little structure. I'm building 15 structure for an exhibition in Italy. Mainly is about reading forgotten drawings. And so it's called Building the Unbuilt. And so that is an exhibition that in the next couple of years, next year. And also very interested in the idea of Shinohara School. I don't know if I just have a little poster, but besides giving lecture this week, but I also organize lectures. And I organized a lot of lectures from some architects in Japan, and we're very particularly interested in the idea of a local school. It's Tokyo School. And I thought Shinohara School was one aspect. I don't know if you guys seen the exhibition of Metabolus. Have you guys seen that? JUT? No? Well, it's very popular in Tokyo, but for some reason the JUT told me it's not very popular in Taiwan. So I encourage you guys to see it because it's a very interesting aspect. Do you guys know about the story? Read this recent news about the Zaha Hadid building in Olympic?
Yes.
Yeah? You know how the Japanese architect decided it's too big, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you think about it, the Metabolists also believe that to build buildings should be that big. Right? It should be a mega form, a mega structure. And Shinohara was at the same period when Metabolist was growing. But Shinohara was more like a monk. Right? He more like lives in a cave. And he sort of decided, wouldn't it be great to actually, you know what, I'm not going to change the society, building a big structure. I'm going to make intimate structures. And you could understand why the word autonomous structure comes in. And if you build a house or a lighting pole, he has a very poetic vision to seeing places. But Shinohara is a very important figure because it affected how Toei Ito understands about space. Sajima understands, Atelier Gawa, Go Hasegawa, all these contemporary architecture you might admire, because it comes from that tradition. So when you're reading buildings, you also have to read historical framework where it came from. Shinohara School starts from Tokyo Tech. So Tokyo Tech is where Atelier Gawa is actually what he teaches. and Tezuka-san, all these architects that from that area. So it's important to understand, I'm interested in history, but I'm not interested in history as a survey. I'm interested in history through biographies. I don't also like the word used public and private. I like to use in a sense what Alto Rossi uses, logics, the city as a logics, the private as a biographies. So you have to sort of think about. I'm going to show you a couple projects today. Not a few, but I thought maybe a few projects to unlearn your learning path. That's what I've always been trying to do, is trying to find. So I don't know if something you noticed, but you know, your educations at this point right now is basically, there used to be a tour name called the Grand Tour. Right? It was very, very, very well used in Europe and also in America. The idea of going to, when you graduate, you spend some time, you travel. And from travel, you learn these figures and understanding different places. But in the, right until recently, the idea of the Grand Tour just started to change. Right? The Grand Tour used to be an intellectual quest. Right? People used to travel, you know, see, and backpack, and travel and see. But now the Grand Tour is changing very professional. People work in the office in Rotterdam, Berlin, is a way to build up their career. So there's very two aspects that the Grand Tour has changed. I'm going to show you these projects, kind of my Grand Tour. They're a little project of different places. Before I want to go that, for me, teaching and project is a very important aspect. I teach a class on visual culture. My students are 180 students. Usually we don't have chairs because Hong Kong University is not so well funded like here. So we have to sit on the floor.
We don't have chairs in there. People are just
but it costs to build this. But this class is a very interesting part because it's a required class. And it has to be architecture, survey. Survey kind of like engineer, they just measure, they do statistics, measuring. And then they have conservation because Hong Kong has a lot of very old buildings, but usually they need to be conserved. Right? And then we have landscape studies. Right? That's a very emerging studies right now in Asia. And also urban study, of course. Right? In Hong Kong, urban study is a very important part of the feature. One of the things that my text is not important, but one of the things that I'm trying to get is actually develop the idea of visual literacy, how to read things. One of the things that visual literacy is like sort of as you develop. So you're not looking at art anymore, but you're also looking at how relationship of text and visuals, visual and sound, and also relationship how these mediums sort of kind of interact. So it's about hybrids, right? So one of the things you have to look at, one of the things, you look at anything, you have the relationship, how is it controlling you, and what message does it want to tell you, right? So that was a very interesting aspect, so that when the students got to read buildings or read the cities, they have to understand how is it read. So we have basically two projects. We actually had to do a film and a book. And I don't show how to get there. The idea is that the very important is about developing a series of ideas from it, systems. And I also teach first year design, so we built a lot of structure. We spent one week in the village, and we built those pavilions. And usually the villager looks at it and they ask, what is this? And we usually tell them it's a scholar rocks. Because it's not ill-defined, such. You can see there's something, they would come in, they would start to remove things, but you can see that how the villagers also adapt to sort of correspondence. We usually still do hand drawing. I see the lot of you first year also do hand drawing, pencil. And we spend a lot of time. We basically ask the student, you only have one piece of paper to draw for the whole semester because we're not so well funded. So we only give them one drawing. So basically, you have to draw and draw and draw and erase until there's no paper anymore. So we encourage the idea that you have to be very frugal in the process. One of the things that a couple of years hit to me 4 years ago, when I was teaching Hong Kong, I was invited to teach in China, and it was a school in Hangzhou. It was called China Academy of Arts. There was a guy, a pretty chubby guy. His name was Wang Shu. He's a vegetarian too, which I thought was. So he invited me. He's like, "Why don't you come and teach?" I thought, "Okay, sure. I'll come and teach at your school." But the only thing is that I cannot be there all the time. I could go there for a little time. I said, "Sure." But I also would like to invite one friend to teach as well. He teaches at the Ed Academy in Beijing called the China Academy of Fine Arts. So I said, "Yi, could you come and we'll teach together? This is our dream project to teach together." He said, "Thomas, you want me to teach?" "No, I'm not an architect, right? I'm a painter." I said, "I'm a curator." I said, "I don't know anything about architecture, but between us, you get to learn architecture in this 4 weeks, so why not just come and teach with me?" So I thought, well, in this process, I thought it was interesting. Basically, we both came, and the student looked at us a bit crazy. He was thinking he's a painter, so we're going to teach. So we thought it's possible to do that. We've never done this before. We said, why not go ahead and do it? So one of the things we asked the student, we asked them, have you seen this movie called Lost in Translation? Have you guys seen this movie, Lost in Translation? Yes. Okay. For half an hour, I talked to the students. They didn't understand. First of all, they thought the whole class was in English, in Chinese, because we thought there was basically two groups. One was some professor from RISD, so that this is gonna be English. And two Chinese, they're gonna be Chinese. So we came in, I think they were completely shocked for the half an hour. It's like, but how come you don't speak to us in Chinese? So we thought, have you seen this movie Lost in Translation? They said, nobody, and I thought maybe it's typical education system in Asia. Nobody asked questions. Everybody's kind of remote. But seriously, not because they were shy, because they'd never seen this movie. Because it's actually called, later I found out it's called Lost in Tokyo.
In China,
it's Lost in Tokyo. Okay. Because translation cannot be lost. This idea that translation cannot be lost. So they changed the movie. Like they see the reason Chinese Lost in Tokyo, but in English it says Lost in Translation. So then I said, that's very exciting because that's when we can actually start to think about a place. How is it possible to look at the place? A couple weeks ago, I was in Beijing and I was invited to look at the new project for the Beijing airport. They're building the 4th airport in Beijing. And so this airport basically, I thought was very funny because it was in the finalists. They've been working for a couple of years now. They have to do 2 presentations. One for the jury, one for the mayor. So you could understand what type of presentation they have to do. So one of them, they came up and asked them, we have a very brilliant idea. I said, what is your idea? It's a bird. It's a phoenix. It's a mythical bird. And they're going to design an airport based on the mythical bird. I said, damn, how many birds we have in China? There's all these airports that look like a bird, right? And I was thinking, these French guys, they're not so metaphysical, right? Then I had to realize that, okay, some other problem, right? If a Chinese architect decided wanted a project to design Paris, an airport for Paris, what would it look like? If I ask you what is the icon of Paris, what would you say? Eiffel Tower? How about New York? Empire State Building. So the problem is right now we realize that we cannot describe a city by the experience, but it's only by icon. Right? So if I was to design, one of you guys design an airport and you figure, oh, what is the French culture? Right? So you might decide that I want to have something iconic, like a French croissant, right? And when I land at the airport, I can see that I'm landing into Paris, right, with a croissant. So this is slightly become a little problem, right? It's already become a problem because the thing is that we always have social visual reading as iconography or a symbol, right? So that became a problem because the most of they said it's Lost in Tokyo. That's already a problem right now. So we said that why don't we ask the project? There's no design for the whole entire semester. We just collect things, and we just get completely lost idea of Hangzhou. So this is a project where we thought one of the things we asked the students to actually create a platform, build a table. So the research project that came out was actually, we thought, how do you define a city by 1,000 objects? So we asked them to collect 1,000 objects, but make sure they're quite similar so that at the end, the objects are no longer significant anymore. So look, you translate that from objects to ideas. So this is one project I thought was quite curious. What is the most distinctive feature in here? Tomatoes, right? So the student asks, is tomato a vegetable or a fruit? Right? This became a very interesting problem, right? And there was one student decided, what is the front, what is the back? When I was working in China, they always said, you need to have a damen, right? You have the presence of the entrance, right? And so one student did a very interesting project. He started to select objects, twist it and photograph it, and you ask them, is this front or back? But it's also depending who has it, right? So it's so the things that started getting very interesting is because they ask these sort of questions. Can you make a comparison between the two objects? Or whatever's in the, is there any similarity between the two? Let's take the tennis ball, right? So the student asks the difference between elevation and section. So it's basically taking one object and cutting it, right? Splitting it in half. So the idea is that when we explore this conceptual idea, it's not about this object idea, it's about representation, how to read it, right? So we sort of developed projects ongoing, and this is one student who's never been to Japan, speaks Japanese, but collect all the seasonal stamps and made a serious house for it. And paint drawings and lines. And this is very interesting because now this person is an assistant for Wang Shu now, and he believes that he wants to collect aggregates, different palettes of stone, and understand the relationship of scale to the city. And that was a very interesting aspect. Right? And so you could use the very fine part for concrete, but up to a certain point, you cannot use it as a concrete material anymore. You have to use it stone by itself. And then sometimes you also have a question of that complete ephemeral, the idea of what does a city smell like. So the time I continue my grand tour, very funny sometimes. Usually people invite you for exhibition, not the place where you stay. They always invite where you left, where you have to go. So I usually get invited to exhibition where I'm not even at the city. So this question is, how do you design or look at the place without being there? So that was some questions that I kind of asked. A lot of time when you're doing project, you always get the sponsorships, right? You tell that who's sponsored, right? It's like Ministry of Culture or something China Airlines. There's always a sponsor. Usually when I start a project, I always try to figure out who's sponsoring the projects. So this case, it was actually by Water from Tibet. And then, you know this company called Lancome, right? And Lancome, during this period, opened this product called Blank Expert, right? What do you think that means? It's a whitening cream. Have you guys used whitening cream? Yes.
I saw.
Yes, I use it sometimes. But I thought it was very funny because, you know, all of a sudden, how come a French company, I thought in the Western Europe, the idea of aesthetic beauty has to do with white. If you can tell, they worry that you're sick, right? But if you're tan, and you're very dark, and you're quite exotic, right? Beautiful, the skin illuminates, the luminosity is incredible. So I thought, this is very funny, huh? Lancome decided want to enter into the Asian market. And this is 2007. And then I thought, this is awfully strange. So when I got this commission to do this project, first thing I kind of thought, what is the title of the exhibition? The exhibition is called Bai, Kong Bai. So it's double meaning. blank and white. But the whole idea is that the exhibition is about cleanliness, the idea of purity and beauty. But then I realized that's going to be a problem. Because like, it's really hard to, if somebody's giving this project, you want to respond to it. You don't want to just build a line to it. So I thought, why don't I make a floor tiles? And this is the geometry of it. If you look at the exhibition, is seen on the ground level, but there's also an upper level. And when I was in Rome, there was a lot of these tiles that, constantly you could see these Palladian floor tiles that you look at for a point, it almost look like this projected cube. So I decided to do a floor tiles. And so I decided to do floor tiles, and I thought the idea of the floor tiles is not about looking at it, it's actually what it bounces back, what it reflects off. So this is you see this, right? What do you think this is made out of? Glass? Yeah. Almost like glass. It's actually water. Right? So I decided to make black water. And because why I thought about black water? Because white clear water don't have a very good reflection process. So I decided how possible I could exhibit. And also, what's nice about it, there's no road here, There's no these white lines that you cannot step over. So I thought, I want to wait to see what happens with this exhibition. And because on the first day, there was a lot of movie stars, usually in kind of grand opening, there's a lot of people, and you can control what people's habits are. There was one man who walked in, he walked onto the glass, and they realized that his beauty, his shoes got really wet. So he basically broke this, and the water came out. And suddenly everybody is not focusing on the art, but focused on the accident, right? And it's like, this guy's an idiot. And the guy's like, it's like, what do you mean tell us is what it is? But also interesting is that because at the point, they didn't think it was art, so they actually just decided to step on it. And so the idea is that everything kind of reflects around it. And I thought that maybe the success of the project is not so much what happens, actually, also what happens, but also not what the building process was. Right? So I'm always very curious what happened after the building is done, what happens, and what happens afterwards. So when I left Italy, I decided to go to New York and I taught there, and then people started to invite me back to Italy. And I thought, okay, how do I look at the aspect of Italy? Now I'm in New York now, how can I think about Italy? So this is a project for an Artissimi art fair in Torino. So they invite me, Thomas, we would like you to do projects. Usually when they give projects, they don't tell you what it is, right? They just do a project. Right? And I thought, there's something, when I was a student, I always wanted to go see this exhibition. That means I have to travel to different places. But a lot of the time, I don't have places to stay. I cannot find rooms. Usually what I do is I go to places and meet somebody, and it's like, great, now we'll find a place or something. Not like the local motel here, and high phones. Just kidding. But it's actually the idea of spatial occupancy. I was very interested in the idea of how do you look in exhibitions, and also possibly how you occupy it. So I thought I want to create an project, which exhibition is 24 hours. So if you look at the time schedule, as the exhibition opens at 1, then it ends at 7, and then you could actually check in to the exhibition. You could sleep there. And so I figured there's something I need to do this. I cannot just make it into a room and just rent, but I thought, why don't I just make a big box? So when the exhibitions open, people walk on top of this place. They ask me, what is the exhibition? That is the exhibition. But what's behind this door? I said, we cannot let you know, because that's a different exhibition. So they said, could I possibly come? When are all these doors open? I said, when the gallery closes. So when the gallery closes, this is when you don't buy the work, you actually rent the work. You rent it overnight. So you could get to stay there, sleep there, And the next day, you close the door, and then you go see another exhibition. So the idea was I thought about the idea of endurance time, how can the people anticipate, not just looking at the work, but also participate in the work. I work a lot of projects in south of Inner Mongolia, but I won't show you this project. I'm going to show you some project that I've done. It's actually in Hong Kong, because I think you might be very curious. What does a architect do in Hong Kong? There's nothing to build there. Right? So, but the thing is, there is a possible way to do projects in Hong Kong. There's one project I didn't show. Is actually I just did a project for a pavilion for M+ Museum, which I made a structure which I buried with dirt. But what I'm going to show you is that I'm also very interested in the idea of what's the difference between a wall and a facade. This place is in the center of Hong Kong, central Hong Kong, and it's a prison, it's a police station, and it's a courthouse. All happen to be in one place. It's called the Victoria's Prison, such and such, right? But the British was very smart, right? They thought, if I arrest you, I'll put you in a court in the building next door, and within a couple of hours, I could also put you into prison within one block. And the administrators live across the street, so I could see the whole process. And it's one of the oldest buildings in Hong Kong. And I'm thinking, idea of conserving the structure. You want to conserve a structure that shows the good part of Hong Kong, right? Not the sin of Hong Kong. Right? So the oldest building in Hong Kong happened to be in the prison. So this prison now is going to be converted to a cultural center, designed by Dr. Ron. And we thought, doing this research, I thought about ideas. You have these strings right here, right? These little threads. Actually, custom designed these strings with color combination. Each of these ropes is enough to hold 350 kilograms. Very tiny string, enough to get you out of the prison if you want to climb out of it. So we thought, the aspect of the 3 programs at once. So I thought, is it possible to also do a string so small, so insignificant? When you put it in the context of the city, you don't see it. But if I put it in a room, it might be possible, very distinctive. So basically, I developed this. I ordered this string, 35 kilometers, which is the distance between that prison to Shenzhen, Hong Kong, to China. So I ordered that much string across. And basically, I start to read, basically, you see some models. I start to read the idea of how to read through these buildings. But then, usually, when we do research, we don't say we do research. We do our counter-intuitive research, right? We say, we want to focus on one material, let's work with it. We did, one of my assistants found this image, and I thought, I was asking, can we get an image of the prison, what it looks like before? And we found this part, it was 1970. The only problem is that there's 2 big trees in the courtyard. So we basically have to change our design based around this tree. But then we realized for this photograph, we also find out, you see this wall here? We're asking them, why is there a fence around the tree? And some people said, oh, it's so that people climb up and can get out of prison. I said, well, I don't know. Maybe if it's a slingshot, maybe. This is the wall. This is very visible in the city. This is where all the great light phone, all the bars, and this is the wall of the city, right? I mean, this is the prison wall. Later I found out was that the fact that why they had the fence around it is because people used to, during the one occupation, people used to harm themselves. And so the tree was it's quite stoic, right? But they had fences around it so that people would not climb and hang themselves. So then the idea of the string started getting like, should we use the string, maybe send a strong message? But it says, we're going to go ahead because at the end, we're going to make something out of it rather than actually focus on the idea of the symbol of it. When we did this process, we also decided, how do we look at the aspect of the wall? So we did a little diagrams to help us understand these. originally, this is where our original, the top part is the boundary. You can see the boundary, originally that was our design, but then realized how the trees squish everything together. But then later, we were working with the conservationists, right? The government personnel basically told us, when you do this installation, you cannot drill any holes under the wall. I said, what? I said, you cannot drill any holes under the wall. I said, the building is not so great, you know, it's a prison. Why does it drill? So what happened, I spoke to one of our teachers, who's the head of the conservation department. He said, that building is second rated. Whatever they told you, it's not that important because everything's been rebuilt before. A lot of things only last 20 years. It's not 100 years. But something I found that was 100 years is that when you squish things together between the trees, and what I found out, that was the original prison, shaped like a panopticon. You know, I don't know if you guys know the panopticons. Basically, it was like designed so that you could only have one guard stand in the middle, so you could look around. You could see every cell. It was actually designed as a hospital, so to make sure everybody is okay. But they use it as a prison to make sure that all the prisoners are okay. So something that we kind of found out a little about it is that our research is actually working backward. We start to find out more about the project through research going backward. We analyze our own work back. So it's something that's very important that I also teach. Idea is like you start a project very counterintuitive or very intuitive, and then work backward and see where it goes. So they told us we could not drill any holes for the exhibition. I said, what a ridiculous idea. And usually what happens is that this ridiculous idea is held by people in the middle, the management people, because they don't know what is right or wrong. They just keep taking a report. So I found that this is something I got to learn about working in Hong Kong. So we developed this project, we kind of built a model thinking, how are we going to weave the strings? We thought, basically it's going to be one bed of strings that's going to weave into 4 different separate rooms. So this is the big trees I mentioned, right? And when we built this, we cannot touch the wall. And so but I have a lot of string under tension. And so I had to get an engineer because they said that without so much strings, I could pull down the wall. I wish I could, but that won't be part of the exhibition, right? And so the string goes through, but then you see this little tiny thing? That's where all the string goes through, into the prison windows. And then it goes through these walls. And they told me my string cannot touch the windows. So I have to make these little, kind of angle frames to get it in. Once I get it in, and also installing this was very difficult because you see these barbed wires everywhere. So when we installed it, we basically had to install it. It was such a pain. But then we decided, once it enters into the building, right, it has a different scale relationship. Right? So the idea of how the string trees in the sense of urban, into the courtyard, into the building facade, but into wards, like the rooms. You can tell that this room is actually for female, not prisoners, but they're wards, but you can see that it's actually pink. So they distinguish between genders. So we built up, so it goes into 4 of these separate rooms. And then they told us we cannot touch anything. So when we do this, we have also put rubber cushions so that it doesn't scratch the old metal parts of the gates. They also told us that you cannot have anything sharp. But it's a prison, right? Do you know that prison, the regulation when they build prison, is the same type of code that they actually go for elementary school. So nobody gets hurt. So because I have lots of strength, right? Because I still have like 35 kilometers, so I decided rather than doing an exhibition for 2 weeks, why not do it for 2 years? So they gave me a building. And they also worried that make sure that nothing tears down the wall as well too. So I thought, Why not just do something much more delicate? Just focus on this particular void. Remember those windows thing that I have to build, right? For the windows. So I just got them, and they're very heavy. So I weld all 4 or 5 together and use it as a weight. So they're just kind of suspending there. When Hong Kong typhoon, they usually have to make sure everything's okay. But so the whole thing is actually just supported weight. So the idea is like you develop a definition of projects, but changes kind of usage, right? It used to be things to control the windows, but now it's actually weight that controls spring fits. Sometimes a lot of these exhibitions not simply just sort of test, you just do it, but it's kind of serious idea to test out. I was invited by the Romanian Academy in Rome. The Romanian is actually not Romans. They're different ethnic groups in different countries. So I get a little confused sometimes when you say Romanian, it's actually Romania. So, but they're Italian, well, they're Latin based, but they understand each other. But the ambassador house of Romania is very strange. It has 2 entrances to the house. One entrance is probably used during the grand opening and never used again. And the other one is probably where the servant goes. That's where everybody uses them. But something they were playing with the idea of perspective. And I thought, there was this door they opened, but it's closed. But if you stand right in the middle, this is what you see. It's 2 staircases, 2 wings. And this staircase is very important because it describes how the villa is a relationship with garden. Gardens in 2 different levels. And it's using the building and the garden and staircase element to understand the idea of garden and the building. So that was very interesting. As opposed to like Suzhou, where they always play with the idea of figures, but it's about windows. It's about playing the idea of how the buildings are in different topography changes. But if you look at the staircase, right, it's actually not just one staircase, it's actually 3 separate staircases. So basically what I did the proposals, the moment you stand on one point, you see these 2 vertical lines. But if you step out that viewpoint, that means that line is separated into 3 parts. So I thought, I want to mark that line. And I said, I want to find some bicycle lights. Rome is like in Taipei, there's nobody rides a bicycle. Well, I think there's much more people ride bicycle here than in Rome. But getting this was very difficult. So I had to go through a Chinatown market to find out where I can get these bicycle lights. So they make a call and they collect it from different cities. So I thought at the end it was great because I want to make sure everything looks the same. So when I decided an exhibition, it's actually an idea of time. So I figured the exhibition would only last as long as the duration of the batteries. And you think that all the batteries should end in the same time, but it's actually not. So people would ask me, how did you synchronize the light? How do you get everything so synchronized? I just turned it on and share this. But the idea is that somehow your visuals start to synchronize. So at the end of the exhibition, I was thinking, first couple lights on, but it's really what at the end you realize that things that appear to be the same, what you get should be the same, capacity is the same, but the performance output is different. Right? So at the end, the exhibition kind of dimpled down. There's only half a light working. But the idea is the idea of the perfection of taking the same model, but the imperfection that happens when you put it into a test. But what's so funny is that people thought this is a light for exit, like a theater, right? So this lady, I thought it was a perfect moment. The thing was closed, it's getting dark. They would start to walk up this line, and I thought, it's perfect, But then they had to walk back, and they told me, that's not the exit line for the building. So the idea is that the idea when they started is the point of the entry as a kind of marker, kind of division of marking buildings and landscapes. But somehow it became a very utilitarian line that never occurred. I also worked on several projects that I work with people I would never ever get to meet. I don't usually like to work with architects. I usually like to work with people that I would never meet. In this case, I work with a elementary school teacher in Chile. But he was one of rare teacher. Do you know what this is, right? Do you have this here?
Not so much.
Not so much, right?
It's a little bit.
Okay, this is like 狮子, right? Like or 剪子.
Yeah.
But this is actually called 狮子 because he doesn't use a scissor. He does it by hand. Here. He is one of the few people in China that does paper tear. And he does it backward. And he does it. He said he has to exercise. Right? He said, like, he told me that this is very interesting. He teaches to a school of children from 1st grade to 6th grade. The 1st grades, their hands are still not mature, so for hands it's very hard to tear. Right? Once they get to the 2nd grade, they get better. 3rd grade, they get better. But once they get to 5th grade, 6th grade, they cannot do this anymore because they have to prepare for tests. So because they don't have to practice, but they have to, because the idea is that when they're too young, their hands not mature, but when they're older, their brains are too mature. They find this is too tedious. So a museum called and said, "We want you to do a collaboration with Tsang." So I said, "Perfect." And I saw his work and said, "This guy is amazing." And I thought, let's do a collaboration. So I basically we lived together because. And I thought, one of the projects is you don't want to ask people, well, what should we do? What should we do? So first, we spent 2 weeks together every day, just looking at each other. I film him, he looks at me, what I'm doing. So we don't talk very much. Actually, we talk about what to eat and what to drink, but we don't talk about the work because I figure we need to understand each other's temperament. So at the end, I asked him, could you rip a plan of a project for us? Right? So he just built it, and I started to realize that we don't know how old this tradition is, because when you tear paper, and this paper are very fragile, so it disappears. So there's no record of history, so they don't know how long this history has been, because people do it as a pastime and throw it away. They just tear and throw it away, so there's no records of it. And sometimes they might tear it in a way to make patterns. So some way I started interesting this idea. It's interesting that there's one particular type of history where there's no documentation. This museum is very funny. They started to do a lot of projects, museum about these speech writers, where they do these long paintings and they burn it. And there's no records of it. But the problem is that because these type of traditions, sometimes you might fall into religious. So we have to be very careful how we use these projects in China. So the connotation of it. So we thought, oh, when do we start to build models and kind of see? And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we do a paper tear that's set up like a stage? And then we kind of sort of developed figures out. I want to show you one thing. I'm going to flip back, but this is the end of the exhibition because typically these paper you always hang on the wall, and they realized that that's not something we want to see anymore. Right? Then it becomes very traditional. We don't want to frame it, so we decided we're going to just make a big long table, very low. So when you look at the work, you can understand also how the artists look at it, the work when they make. You see these pieces, right? You see this background? They're not trees or branches, they're actually characters. So they're actually just stories behind it. And these are the figures. So he has quite a bit. And these ones we decided also to make in one line because these are actually sketched, they're studies. And these are a lot about vegetables, seasonal vegetables in Chile. And there's certain ones that are propaganda. But one of the things we thought was interesting is that we're very interested in the idea of doing educational projects. So we thought, why don't we make a self-educational school? Right? Basically, a school with no instruction. And we thought, what would be the perfect idea of a school? And we thought, why don't we make a series of tables? So this is one table. We also made one table out of paper, a wooden frame. It's 10 meters by 5. So it's about the size, a little smaller than this room. And basically, the students would go in, and they would come out, and they would just build up. So the idea is that by the end of the exhibition, this whole entire will be covered, because they learn to care by just watching what other people have done. So the idea is like thinking, we're interested in always the idea of like how do you use a single object and element, dictate that as a whole entire process, and show it as a process. This is the last project I'm going to show. You know, there's a lot of phenomenon in. I think in Taichung, there's a lot of museums being built here, right?
Yes.
Right? There's a lot of museums. But you cannot beat China because China right now has approximately 43,000 more museums. Right? The future of museums in China, the research at Columbia University, beyond the China's art gallery boom, prosperous China goes museum building, blah, blah, blah. It's just, the idea of this topic, the museum, is very interesting. And we thought, why don't we look at this project of a museum? A lot of this museum, they built is for a big party, right? They have a grand opening for about 3-6 months, and afterwards, they don't know what to do with it, right? Because a lot of stories about how the museum has no collection, right? They built a museum, then they were thinking, okay, this would be a museum for ceramic, but then there's no ceramics. Right? They have to call people, can we borrow your ceramics? And it's a project about history, and there's no